Hello, welcome back to Leading Our Own Way here on YouTube, part 1, with James Martin, another fellow Brit living here in Australia, the Australian dream, or is it? Well, what if some challenges you face weren't roadblocks, but stepping stones? This week, here on Leading Our Own Way, we're going to sit down with James Martin, an entrepreneur and leader who built his life on independence, resilience, and the pursuit of something bigger, from a childhood shaped by brief stint in foster care, put there by himself, may I add, to finding his purpose through entrepreneurship here in Australia. James' journey is proof that your past does not define you. So in this episode, we're going to explore where it all began, the lessons, the struggles, and the drive that pushed him forward. Let's dive right in with James right after the intro. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Mr. James Martin, welcome to Leading Our Own Way. How are you?
I'm all right, Andy. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for joining me. So everybody knows, we've got two British people on the podcast. I've got a fellow Brit joining me on the podcast tonight, but we're both here in Australia.
You know, it's a great place to be. It definitely beats the UK, in my opinion. But,
well,
you know.
If there's any UK listeners out there, don't hate us and don't send any med messages towards us.
Or just come to Australia and figure it out for yourself. Yeah.
Well, that's true. That's very true. I know we're going to get into your journey of being in Australia, but James Martin, I was thinking about before, the name James Martin, I just feel like I'm listening to some famous singer. I bet you get that all the time, don't you?
Famous chef.
Chef.
There is a famous chef, James Martin. Yes, I do Google searches on my name occasionally, just for curiosity's sakes. I never appear on page 1. Doesn't matter how much stuff I put on the internet. Always going to be page 3 or 4 on Google. I've kind of given up now. But yes, there's a famous chef in the UK called James Martin.
Oh, I never heard of it. I was thinking of the. Must be a favourite singer. Well, it sounds similar to your name anyway. I've obviously got it wrong.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. So, James, we met at a network meeting in Melbourne through a mutual friend who's also been a guest here as well on the show of Leading Our Own Way, Alex from Core Story. And she said you've got a bit of a cool story, cool journey to share, and you'd be good for the podcast. So here we are. And it was awesome to meet you that day.
Yeah, look, some people think that my story is fascinating. I just see it as my own story, but if it can shed some wisdom or enlighten some people or empower some people to follow a similar journey, then who am I to deny them that?
Yeah, absolutely. And what situations have you been in before where you've shared your journey then?
There aren't many people who have the full picture simply because of how long and convoluted it is. Most people get bits of things that are relevant to the situation or the scenario or the conversation. But lots is the answer. There's lots to cover. Lots of things have happened over what is really only a 20-year period of life. I'm 27 now, so most of this happened from the age of 10 onwards, and a lot's happened during that time.
Yes. Well, I don't know much about it. We had a pre-chat, but I think we just got talking about life in general, didn't we? We had a bloody good chat from that pre-chat, but we didn't get nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, I tend to go off topic occasionally.
Me
but
too.
I'm doing my best to try and correct that. Yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, let's get stuck right in. I always ask my guests, as my viewers know, the title of the podcast, as you know, is Leading Our Own Way. And I think that's a really good place to start because it's positive. We're leading our own way. Everyone's leading their own way in their own way. And I just want people to see that light at the beginning. So I suppose I'll start there, James. How are you leading your own way?
So I'm leading my own way by effectively doing the things that I think are right for me and for the world. I'm running companies that I think will help people. It's very much one of my core values. So doing things that kind of help me to help people is how I see myself leading my own way. So I've always been very independent. And these are, that's pretty much how I lead my own way is through independence.
Yeah, that seems to be a word that when I look over the notes I did make on you, it seems to be a trait in your early life where independence seems to take place quite a lot, and we'll get there. That'll become very clear, won't it? I suppose then. Okay, so what are you doing professionally then? You said you run a few businesses. There's a bit of a journey there. We won't go too far back yet, but what are you doing professionally every day? And I know you're doing a few other things in the present moment as well.
Uh, yes, a lot is the answer.
Don't know even
So
how I got you
I,
online tonight.
with just good timing. I During my day-to-day life, I do a lot of sales, but I also run a score of businesses. So I do a lot of immigration work, helping people move to Australia through a similar journey that I went through. I've also been working in the finance industry for about 5 years. So I co-own and co-founded a brokerage for people looking to buy homes and pretty much anything else that can be financed. And I also run a virtual management company out of the Philippines. So where I take Filipinos who are in rural and remote areas and help place them with small businesses out in Australia to give them a better chance at life and succeeding. And then when I'm not doing all of that stuff, which is not very often, I'm also an MBA student. So I'm approximately halfway through now in March 2025. Yes, halfway through.
Nice. Well, let's give you.
Yeah.
Well, whilst we're here, then let's give your businesses a bit of a plug, because if you want, I'm happy to put them in the show notes, and people who contact us might need your support, especially for those who are coming
Yeah,
over to Australia. Let's go through your
absolutely.
businesses then, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so the first business that I founded. Um, so here's a bit of a cliff note and a bit of a backstory. So I never wanted to own or found a business. It was never in my dreams. And there was this quote by Simon Sinek, and he said, "It's typically people who never want to be managers that make the best managers."
Mm.
And you could kind of, by extension, apply that to people who run businesses. The people who typically never want to run businesses are not necessarily always the most successful, but they're usually the most dedicated because they don't want to run a business for the sake of doing it. They want to do it because it's a way of leading their passion and leading their dreams to wherever they want to go, kind of leading your own way effectively.
Mm.
So, yeah, so I founded Global Change Solutions, which is the immigration firm, back in September of 2023. So that's been running for a little while now. And initially, the premise was the entire premise of why the company was founded was based on my journey moving to Australia. So I immigrated here in 2019, and I realized after like a year of planning that when I got here, I still actually I had all of this stuff in place. I had a place to sleep. I had, my passport. I had everything else, but I actually had no idea how to even get to the city. Right. So I landed in the airport, had no phone, didn't know how to get to the city, didn't know how to actually contact anyone. So I'd done all of the big picture research, but
Mm.
none of the little bits. And there's not a single immigration company that offers the little bits. So I decided that taking that problem that people face on a daily occurrence, particularly in Australia, where people move here all the time for students or just people in general, that I would take that problem and try and fix it. So I started Global Change, and what it does is the immigration side of the business. So visa applications, all of that fun stuff, but also goes beyond that and offers help in finding work. It offers help in finding a place to live, understanding your way around the healthcare system, the tax system, the banking system, all of these fun things that you need to kind of be across to be able to really survive. And the idea was to compact. So it took me 2 years to get everything together once I moved here. The
Mm.
idea was to take that 2 years worth of uh, hassle effectively and compress it into something that somebody could buy, and we would effectively then go and do some of the work for you or point you in the direction of the things that you actually had to do yourself.
Yeah.
So applying for things like tax file numbers and all of the little bits and pieces that you don't think of until you get a job and somebody asks you for a TFN and you actually don't know what TFN stands for
Yeah.
or what it is because you've never heard of it. Now you've got to go figure that out. So
Yeah.
it's ticking all of these little check boxes is kind of what global change was designed for.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, when I moved here, I didn't have all that stuff either, so I can definitely
Great.
vouch for that side of things.
You can
And
relate, right?
I can
Yeah.
definitely relate. And I ended up filling my forms out till midnight every other night, you know. Um,
Yep. That's a lot of
I
work.
didn't have the money for anything else, for the lawyer fees because I had to pay my bloody university fees. I had no
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
But
I can relate to that as well. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's very, very well thought through to get those finer details. Is that business going pretty well then?
Like it's had its hits and misses. We realized late last year that actually it's a bit of a seasonal business.
Yeah.
So when people look at so I actually got the idea to move to Australia. Well, I was living in Liverpool at the time in the UK, and I picked up this magazine that you see on the bus, and it had this entire page about Australia, and that kind of got me thinking. I was like, oh, okay, this might be fun. Anyway, my mum talked me into it, and like 18 months later, I lived here. Um, but the whole premise of that advert that I saw was that it was warm, it was sunny, there was, photos of Sydney, there was, pretty text and everything else. But the key was it was sunny. Nobody wants to move to Melbourne during the winter. It's
Mm.
not sunny here in winter. It's pretty miserable.
Sunny than
It's not
England.
as bad as the UK.
I was about to
It's
say.
not as bad as the UK for sure, for sure. But when you think about Australia, the things that you think about are the sun. You think about beers on the beach. You think about barbecue. You think about friends. You think about kangaroos. There aren't as many of them as people think. And you think about these kind of things, right? But you
Yeah.
don't think about Mount Baw, right? The mountains. You don't think about other little bits and pieces like this. You kind of create this image in your mind that is the sunny, happy, hopeful place, or at least that's what it was for me. So we realized that global change was a seasonal business, and people therefore wanted to move here during sunnier periods, like warmer periods, so late spring, summer, early autumn. And the business it almost goes into a dormant phase over winter. So you get the occasional person who's still keen on doing it for whatever reason. It might be work, it might be study, whatever. But the bulk of our clients typically tend to come over during the warmer seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So we've covered that business, but there's more. What's the other business
always.
called? Just the TNMF, is it?
Yeah, so we co-founded a company called Teachers Nurses Mortgage and Finance Company, which yes, I realize is a bit of a mouthful.
No, it's awesome
And you're
because I never
gonna
put all those together.
correct, and you're gonna love the fact that it trades as both community builders mortgage and finance and education healthcare mortgage and finance. And basically, it's a brokerage. It's a brokerage that takes on board clients and helps them to buy whatever it is they really want to buy. So that might be residential property, it might be investment property, it might be a car, it might be consolidating some debt, or buying some commercial property, for instance. It could really be anything.
Mm.
And we did this because we realized, and the reason it was originally called TN for teachers and nurses was because we realized that actually there were a lot of teachers and nurses that were really great people to work with and kind of undervalued in the market, considering what they put on the table in terms of raising our children and saving our lives, that actually they were not being treated in the same respect on the way back. So we decided to do something about it. So the brokerage will pretty much take anybody in terms of clients, but they have different focuses depending on what industry you come from. So we're firm believers in paramedic rescue, like firefighters, police officers, teachers, principals, all of these kind of people, because they're the people who build our community at the end of the day. So, yeah. And then whatever we make back from them, we donate 10% of it back to charity.
Wow.
Which nobody else in Australia does.
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go to the purpose of why you set it up then. Where did that come from? I know why you did it, but where did that come from? Where did that thought process? Why did you want to give back to those particular people?
Well, we don't necessarily give back. So, do you mean the charity component, or why we prefer those people as clients?
Yeah, those as clients first, and then we'll go to the charity.
Okay. So, why those as clients? So, my mum's a teacher. my business partner Laurie, his mum's a teacher, and we worked with teachers, we've worked with nurses, and out of everybody we found, they're typically the people who have the hardest time getting stuff done because they're so busy. And it's sometimes, most of the time, the easiest people to deal with. They're prepared, they're organized, they're ready to go when they say they're ready to go. And we like working with people like that. It makes us easier, right? You guys, teachers, are very used to doing a lot of paperwork. They don't get scared away by forms.
Not anymore.
Nurses to going, there's an emergency, you have to get it done.
Yeah.
So when we convey that there's an emergency, it doesn't take them 5 business days to send us a text message back, which is why we prefer to work with these clients. We kind of seek them out, but again, we don't limit ourselves to that client base.
Yeah.
In terms of the charity component, we realized that actually if we were just going to open any other brokerage, that in reality we'd probably just save ourselves the pain and heartache and just go and work for somebody else's broker, because there wouldn't be much of a difference. So my business partner's been in finance for really bordering on 30 years now, and I've been in it for about 5. So we know a fair amount about it between us. And we realized that based on the companies that we've worked for in the past, that we thought we could do it better. And that's why we decided to do it. And the charity component it's really just because it's the right thing to do, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah.
There are a lot of donations. Pre-COVID, donations were quite a popular thing. Now with post-COVID and the cost of living, it's much harder for people to raise donations. So we thought that we could do it as a corporate. We could do it more effectively, and we could do more of it as a corporate. So for every $10,000 we earn, we spend $1,000 and give it back to charity. And in fact, if the loan is written by or if the loan is for somebody who actually works for a charitable organization, we donate 20%.
Wow. What sort of reactions have you had from those clients when you've donated 20% back to their charity?
Quite good reactions, actually.
I can imagine.
Particularly when we approach the charities, we've had some hit and miss cases with some. Some are extremely content that this is something that we want to do, and we want to help them to do it, because the client gets to nominate the charity.
Yeah.
So it's not like we pick one charity and we just pile money into it. We have a panel, we have a board that decides at the end of the year who stays and who doesn't. And then the charity's kind of selected for over the course of about 2 years. And then after that, we cycle through them and start again. Or we cut out the bottom stragglers and bring in new ones effectively. And some charities love that. Some charities hate it because there's no security involved in it, going, oh, well, in 5 years, we're still going to be getting donations, because it's not how it works. So, yeah.
Fascinating.
So it keeps them accountable, it keeps them honest, and it keeps us flowing and people happy. So yeah, that's why we do it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Fantastic. So in terms of what you're doing businesses wise then, is you also run a bit of a podcast as well, or you are setting one up, is that right?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the process of setting one up, but given how much other stuff I have going on, it's been a bit of a challenge finding the time to do it.
And tell me about it.
I like coming and doing these things. I'm not really that great as a host, because preparing for podcasts, as you and I both know, take a fair amount of time. And if you're trying to do this consistently, it can take up quite a lot of time. And the problem is time is the one thing I don't have a surplus of at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I'm very constrained on time.
So in terms of businesses then, I lose count. Have we covered all your businesses there so far?
Just 3. Just only 3.
Got any more?
No, just 3.
Okay.
I was thinking of starting something else recently, and I decided maybe I should finish one thing first before I started something else.
Let's stop there.
Yeah. The fourth idea was kind of a gimmick for university. I was planning on doing like t-shirt runs, t-shirt prints at graduation ceremonies. Like when kids when family goes on holiday and the dad comes home and he goes, we all went to New York City and all I got was this crappy t-shirt. I was planning on doing something very similar for my university. I graduated from whatever university and all I got was this crappy t-shirt. Something along those lines. I thought it'd be funny. I got some mixed reactions in the chat a few days ago, but yeah, so I'm gonna hold off on that until I actually graduate, and then I'll decide.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. Fair enough.
yeah.
We will come back to your studies, but you've been in Australia for 6 years.
5.
5. Sorry, we said 2000.
Yeah,
No, okay, nearly 6 then.
2020. Yeah, December 2019.
Oh,
So
is it right
in
at the end?
December of
Okay.
this, yeah, correct. So in
Yeah.
December of this year, it'll be 6. Yeah.
So why Australia? Why move to Australia?
Well, I'd never left Europe, so I thought that the other side of the globe would be a fun place to live. I pretty much, it's kind of funny on how I landed on Melbourne specifically. In terms of Australia, so my mum is an Australian citizen, although she's kind of let it lapse and hasn't really claimed it recently. So I decided that I would go and apply for my passport with them and go through that whole process. Um, Probably easier than applying for a visa, but still challenging, particularly when the only embassy you can go to is down in London and you live nowhere near London.
Mm.
So bit of a challenge there, but got it done. That opened up the door to Australia, and then in terms of where I decided to move in Australia, I'd literally just I picked I put a map on the screen, map of Australia, and I pretty much closed my eyes, just did that, and then landed there, and that's how I ended up in Melbourne.
Yeah. And
It was
you've
very
been
much by
really
chance.
sorry.
It was very much by chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
much
could
so.
have been anywhere. Could have been worse. Could have been Canberra.
Well, you've been very busy, obviously, clearly, since you've moved to
Yeah,
Australia. So I'm going to
yeah,
circle back to that independence because it kind of makes sense why you've done what you've done. And I would like to touch base on the manager side of the with Simon. You did bring up Simon Sinek before, and I adore Simon. He looks at the human side of leadership, which I very much
he
do
does.
also.
I think he's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've quoted him in my book, How to Lead with Purpose, as well. I absolutely love him. I love what he stands for. That human side of leadership, then, where are you attracted to Simon's philosophies, then? Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.